I don't think I ever really believed everything.
And I realized that quite a few of the things didn't hold water.
The actual religions were man-made from wherever.
God? Who's God? What's God?
I think that skepticism really is the first step.
Scientific zest and zeal for the real world.
That was it. I was an atheist from then on.
And that's essentially another way of saying don't confuse open-mindedness with gullibility. Pretty common.
Is what part of the United States is this, in New York City?
Upstate New York and Syracuse.
Syracuse.
Yeah.
Do you find that a different community than it is down in, let's say, New York City proper?
Yeah, sure.
Could you give me some examples as to why that is the case?
Well, it's a different community because it's a smaller town, you know, obviously, and you get the smaller town sort of trends and...
If you poop, everybody knows it?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, it's a little bit more isolated. You get a lot of open-minded, sort of like curious people up there, but there's also a lot of like rural folks who are kind of like happy with where they are and
what they believe in.
They're not too interested in expanding or, you know, their interests into. But in New York, obviously, it's like a melting pot of everything. So.
I was just going to say, a lot of the communities in New York State are of a specific ethnicity or a specific group, whether it's German or you know, whatever the case may be. They sort of stick in groups, and it's difficult for them to. They carry those old European ways with them.
Yeah.
And so you can see enclaves in groups like that.
For sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
And
Great.
so, you were an only child or sibling?
No, I have 3 siblings. I have an older brother and 2 younger sisters.
And you went to public school or Catholic school?
Public school, yeah.
Public school.
Yeah.
Your parents are alive still?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And how old are your siblings? So
Well, my brother is 35 now, and my sisters would be 30 and 28, I suppose.
And you are?
I'm 33.
Okay, right.
And they're still Catholic, or have they also seen the light of reason?
I don't really talk to them much about that subject, but
Okay.
I don't think that any of them have carried their sort of religious upbringing with them into their adulthood in any significant way.
And your parents are fine with what you believe or don't believe, or
My parents are both highly moderate religious, like almost to the point of being non-religious. They're the I go to church on Christmas and
Yeah,
Easter types.
Catholic.
Holiday
They
Catholics.
call them cafeteria Catholics.
Yeah, essentially. And
Right.
religion's never talked about in the home. It was sort of a when we were young, it was more of a, I guess in their mind, they thought that it was a community environment where they could bring the kids to help teach them basic morals and values and community and that kind of thing. But as far as being strict about any of the doctrinal sort of lessons, it was very relaxed. Yeah, it was almost never even talked about.
So what made you start thinking it was all fairy tales and stuff?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question. I thought about that myself for a long time because I didn't remember exactly when. I feel like a lot of people say that where it was a gradual process. Yeah. There was no like one moment. But I think I do remember the moment when it kind of clicked for me. And I think that it was my first year when I moved to New York City, and I was working a lot, and I was browsing the internet. And I think I found the TED lectures. I discovered what TED was. A friend of mine recommended it, and I was browsing through TED, and I stumbled across the TED lecture that Sam Harris did.
There you go. That'll do it.
And I didn't know who he was. I'd never heard of him before, but I was just browsing for education. I was just curious about the educational talks because they're all really interesting.
They are.
And he just made so much sense on a topic that I never really thought that hard about. But once I heard him talk about it, I was like, maybe I should think a little harder about this. And that kind of started it. And then I just sort of researched who he was, and then that kind of got the whole ball rolling. I started tumbling into all the other public intellectuals in the atheist movement at the time.
And the internet helped a lot.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it was instrumental. Yeah.
I have a feeling it's going to hopefully build up atheism and bring down eventually.
It looks like it's at
Through
least.
Yeah, because even in the heart of the Bible Belt, you can get online and onto the internet, and even if nobody else knows, you can secretly, even if you don't say anything, you can secretly listen to the TED Talks or whatever, and
The debates show you it just doesn't make sense when you listen to the excuses the apologists give compared to reason and scientific explanations for things. And let me tell you something. A lot of the young people, including middle-aged people and those who are getting on the internet, they listen to that and they're scratching their head, that doesn't make sense. Or, what that guy is saying does make sense compared to the rubbish that you normally hear.
Yeah,
But it's rubbish. But and I think that sort of was a machine rolling, that little snowball getting bigger and bigger, sort of the God delusion. And went on with the four horsemen, as we well know and you mentioned. And people are listening, and you can see the rapid change when it comes to from 18% all the way up to 23% and even higher as far as the people who are
The nonners.
Yeah, the nuns.
Not the nuns, but the nuns.
the nuns.
Make sure we understand that. I'm sorry.
Explain what you mean by the nuns.
Yeah, the nuns are a group. And this is a conglomerate. This is not conglomerate. It's a bad word to use. This is a variety of people who are those who are religious and that have changed, that do not attend church on a regular basis anymore. Those who are students, those who are just general people who think and listen, but have come to reason, basic reason on that through education and through common sense type of values. And this has been basically chronologized by a number of organizations, including groups such as the
Freedom from Religion, Secular
Humanists, right, and other organizations. I'm thinking of one in particular that that puts out a report. The Pew Research is called. And by the way, the voice that you hear in the background is our
fearless leader,
Ken, who part of which is Ken of the New York City Atheists president, and he has some good thoughts, and he'll be talking later on, asking questions.
Let me just interrupt for a second.
Yes,
let me give you a little bit of definition of what is called the nuns, N-O-N-E-S. It's a group of people. It's atheists, agnostics, free thinkers. They have a group called non-religious, non-affiliated, and that group right now is approximately 22% of the American public. Now, if you segregate it and only look at younger people from 18 to 35, that is now 33% of the American public. And that's the fastest growing group in the United States. Now, if you take that group, the 22%, 35%,
politically,
they're greater than all the Jews, they're greater than all the Muslims, and they're almost up to the number of Catholics.
That's right, almost.
Okay, and by 5, they should cross over pretty quickly. So that's the group we're in now, we put them together. And that's what I just want to emphasize.
And more importantly is that group eventually will be a voting power.
Yes.
And that could be the influence that is necessary to change a lot of attitudes from your politicians and a lot of laws and a lot of reasonings that people don't have. And this is very, very important, especially in the time where you have a lot of animosity and a lot of religious extremism throughout the world. It's things like that, and the internet do help make a difference. So thanks to the internet that we're getting this type of thing.
Absolutely,
okay?
Yeah.
What were some of the chief reasons for your change? Was it on a scientific basis or just basically listening to the internet?
Well, I think, as I said, because I grew up in a very nominally Christian home, very sort of and I don't think I ever really believed, To me, church, was the most boring thing in the entire world when I was a kid. And I hated it because it was just so boring.
Yeah.
But I remember it was more of a activity, like going to school or going to camp. You know what I mean? I never thought of it as a religious experience. It was just where you went to see your friends and listen to an old guy talk for a little while.
An old guy. Okay.
You know what I mean? I never really paid a lot of attention to it. So when I got older, I think I honestly never thought about it. It was just like a non-issue in my life. And then it wasn't until I stumbled across all the really good arguments and I was suddenly like, this is a thing, isn't it? I was like, this is like a real thing. Like, maybe I should pay attention. And then I got really into it because I realized it dawned on me really quickly that the influence that religion has on society, particularly in America where I live, is really corrosive.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. And I saw it as an opportunity to take like a more of an activist position on it. You know what I mean? And that's when I started taking it more seriously and paying more attention and educating myself a lot more thoroughly on the details of the arguments and everything.
Was this before Obama became president or after?
I think it was like right when he got elected. Like it was like 2009.
Because when he became elected, it seemed like all these fundamentalists crept out of the woodwork and started trying to change the laws in America regarding freedom from religion, and trying to take away the rights, especially of women, to their own bodies, which is when I joined the New York City Atheists. I mean, I've been an atheist since I was 10.
Sure.
But it was this...
Galvanized at that
time. This emergence of these regressives that turned me into an active atheist, because
I think when he gave the oath and he said it's not just to all believers but to non-believers as well, I think that changed a lot of people's mind. All of a sudden the ears started twitching like this, like antennae, you know, and the evangelicals were very upset. What does he mean by that? Them included? What's going on there? Well, yes, and people weren't too sure that he didn't say one thing or another, but said it should be inclusive, right?
And I don't know if I recall correctly, but didn't he choose to not swear on the Bible but the Constitution, or was it like something like that?
It was brought up the fact that they did,
or no, it was Abraham Lincoln's
Bible. Yes,
that was what it was.
But that everybody knew that at that time, I think it was that he didn't have to. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't in the Constitution. But everybody was looking for any little difference, anything that he might say. They wanted to jump on his former preacher that said something. Boom, they would jump on it. If it was that was he a citizen? Was he still from Nigeria or Kenya or whatever? They jumped on that, and you listen to as if that matters. But they were looking for anything and everything to find fault with this black guy coming on there. But that's beside the point.
Yeah.
I'm going to get back to something else.
Sure.
You have been involved in a number of things, and I'd like to know a little about your background. You're into graphics, I hear.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I'm a motion graphics animator. I'm a freelancer here in New York City. I've been freelancing for about 8 years in the industry.
And where did you get your training from? Was this at...
I went to school for animation in Pittsburgh, actually, at the Art Institute.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
I got a bachelor's degree there in computer animation.
Have you heard of Maya? Program Maya?
Oh, yeah. No, but a lot of my colleagues use Maya a lot.
It is known in the industry that if you really know Maya, you know, they can make over...
I don't know Maya, so please explain.
Maya is a animation form where you can develop objects and animate them and use them in things like what Walt Disney does. And those who have put 4 years of training and get a degree into that could wind up making over $200,000. They almost can demand their price as to what they want to be paid. So Maya is something that you don't necessarily have to go to college for, but it is something that could very well help you get out of the, or, you know, have to worry about going back to junior college or whatever, but go right on to making some good money. And that's Maya, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so your involvement in that type of thing. And by the way, we want to let folks out there know this gentleman will be helping us with the developing our program. Ken, would you like to mention a little about what we're trying to do and modernize our program? He's going to be helping us.
Well, let him do it. He'll take it.
Okay,
Sure.
Tell us.
Well, we're just going to take the format that has already been used, and we're just going to try and spruce it up a little bit. We're going to see if we can't add a fully animated intro to the show, something a little bit more, high level, and then do some, basic color correcting treatments and stuff to the footage. Try and clean up the footage, make it look a little bit more crisp, and really just
modernize.
Yeah, just
bring it up to date.
We're still coming up with different ways to try and improve the video quality and the presentation overall. So we'll be doing that. Yeah.
And folks, I want to mention something to you as well. We have a newsletter, and we also have a website. And the website is modernized and is getting even better and better. And we're always looking for people who would like to be involved on committees. And those committees, I think, are going to be very helpful and advantageous to getting our word out and reaching other people. Ken, could you mention more about that,
please?
please?
A 3D version of our program?
3D version of the whole show. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but that sounds like it would be cool.
On the committees, Ken, could you tell us a little about that, please?
Well, we have a whole series of committees we're trying to set up. For example, this year, which is going to be very important, we want to have an election committee where people are going to be working on the election. So, for example, what we want to do is we want to develop what's called a scorecard. We send to all the people who are running for office and find out their positions in the areas of separation of church and state. So that's important, so we can tell people that this candidate says they for or against these areas, okay? We also want people to get involved in actually political campaigns, because ultimately someday some of us may want to run for office. So we have to learn the process. And finally, what we want to do, which is the most important, is start to get atheists to vote as atheists, a voting bloc. Because the only way we're going to compete with the religious right and the Tea Party people and the National Rifle Association, which are a voting bloc, is have our own. And if we can get a large percentage of the people who are in our group, we will have as much power or not as many as any other groups in the country. So ultimately, we have to do that because the most important problem we have right now is the Supreme Court. We've got to make sure that the future president doesn't appoint all these conservative guys on the court, or we're finished.
And by the way, folks, we're not saying what party to go for. We're not doing that as
we
are 503C. But the thing is that we have a number of committees, and we're looking for people who can help us be on the committees, including, I believe, legal. We are interested in lawyers who would like to lawyers who would like to give their time to do something like this and help us on these. These are very important cases that we have out there, and we're concerned not only in New York City but around other places too. We have a mayor, and we have a governor, and we have a lot of religious organizations trying to influence these political parties and their leaders. And so this is very, very important that we are up to date in what's going on, listen carefully, and participate as soon as we see that is something detrimental to our rights as a free person to be able to say things and think non-religiously.
As a young man, do you have any idea on how to maybe any convincing argument for others of your generation to see the light of reason that brought you away from these fairy tales?
You mean like towards folks who are convinced of the opposite opinion?
Yes.
Well, not opposite, but other opinion.
Like meetups and groups where you can get together.
No, just an argument. What was the breaking? The moment of that. Ted did it, and various other ones. I mean, but what was it that? Who was it? Hitchens?
Sam Harris.
Harris was one of the horsemen.
Yeah.
Did he have like one convincing? I mean, was there one piece that really stood out?
I mean, I think it was really just
the whole 18 minutes.
It was a combination of just really straightforward, ironclad, logical arguments that you couldn't disagree. If you disagreed with it, it was likely either, out of defense.
Yeah, and you were clinging to your...
Or from some kind of cognitive dissonance type scenario, or confirmation bias, or some kind of apologetic and all apologetics are bad apologetics. So
true. Non-common sense.
Yeah, there's no there really is no one knockdown thing you could say, because everybody finds their path a little bit differently. Yeah. But I'd say I guess the only thing I would say is just try to be intellectually honest with yourself
and open-minded.
And remember that open-mindedness is good, but you don't want to be so open-minded that your brain falls out. And that's essentially another way of saying don't confuse open-mindedness with gullibility.
Right. There's a difference there, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's where power of reason comes in, and being skeptical.
And
Yeah,
critical
skepticism
thinking.
is actually that's a good. I should have said that too, because that's actually a really important sort of like leg of that tripod of ideas. Like
That's the basic, as you say.
Yeah.
And that's where you develop critical thinking and deductive reasoning. That's where it comes in right after that. Those that go into college, the first year, second year, are taught that. And you have to understand.
Well, it depends
that.
on the college.
Well, except for the religious colleges, Liberty University, and a number of the other ones. But that's unfortunate for them.
Yes.
But that's what happens, and this is where you start doing that, and you start looking at it from a different angle, a different perspective.
Yeah.
You would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the important reasons why I think when you mentioned skepticism that was so valuable is because I think that even theists who are convinced that they're right can still be skeptical without feeling like they're sort of flying in the face of their own beliefs. I think that skepticism really is the first step. And if you can become skeptical as a theist, you're opening the possibility up to change your mind.
Opening doors to knowledge.
Yeah.
You see, and reason.
Yes.
And that's good.
Which is why certain parties don't like it.
Yes, of course, of course. Did science have anything to influence you as far as developments or anything at all?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a big science enthusiast. I've always enjoyed the sciences, even since I was a child. It's just one of those things where, and I don't want to say this too strong of a way, but to me, science is the only tool that we have as humans to find at least optimal objective truths.
Right.
There's no such thing as absolute certainty, but you can find objective truth to a level of accuracy that's so close to 100
that's why we
that it becomes unreasonable not to believe
right.
it.
That's why we use the term theory.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, people out there, listen carefully. There are two definitions for the word theory.
Right.
Okay. One is a colloquial term, which is what's known in science as a hypothesis. Right. But there is the other one. If you look at the a dictionary, there's one that's called a scientific theory. It's a theory of gravity. It's a theory, and as you mentioned, you get very close to what is possible, but there's always improvement on that. And that's the important thing. It's that it has been recognized by the majority of the scientific community on a specific discipline, and it has to be not only observable and also a theory has to have be able to be predictable in its judgment, and that's where you do this. And what's also called it has to be, in a way, falsifiable.
Right.
And those are the three things that are used. You use that, you come out with a good way of doing things. In fact, all your scientific Nobel Prizes are not just by guessing. It's because they have worked out things where things have been provable, falsifiable, and of course predictable. And that's the way you do it. This is what it's all about.
And science has gotten us to Mars, out there to Pluto.
Exactly.
And,
it's
incredible.
Very incredible that it's done so, against all biblical type of thoughts where you can't go higher than...
Did you know that the Earth actually orbits the sun? And the world isn't flat?
That's right.
And pi is 3.14159, blah, 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 instead of just plain 3.
That's right.
Incredible.
Those are incredible things. So those are true. And that's important because you look at the Tower of Babel, and he didn't want us to get any higher to go to heaven. And so therefore, he made us speak all different languages. What an unbelievable story. And if that's the case, what are the astronauts doing down there? Like this? Yeah, right. Huh? So doing that to the people below who believe into that. So these are the type of things we're growing up, and hopefully the world will grow up too. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. And I think that there's a lot of good evidence to suggest that it's on that track right now. Especially like what we spoke about before, about how the internet is interconnecting people globally in a way that has never happened before. And it's changing the game. Yes. And the sort of theocratic encroachment onto global society is losing its grip.
And that's
right.
why they're so
You know,
terrified.
That's why they're shouting so much and they're so loud.
Even in Iran, believe it or not, a lot of the people love America and a lot of the things that's going on there. It's just those who have that control politically, the Ayatollah and those whatnot.
Well,
in a
blasphemy is
theocratic way.
against the law in so many places. You know, and
Absolutely.
atheism is a form of blasphemy.
We have a question by our president of New York City Atheists, Ken.
I have a little statement. Marilyn Murray O'Hare, which is the founder of the American Atheism,
Right.
really causing it in the United States, had a famous statement. And she said, if it wasn't for religion, we would have landed on the moon 400 years earlier.
That's a good thought. Yes, so that's a good thought. Something to think about. I'd like for you to reach our audience out there and maybe give your thought for those who are fence straddlers, those who are not quite sure which way to go. They're listening to this program, as to some of your thoughts and ways to get about life in general and think on the basis that you have thought about.
Sure. I think, the very first and most important thing to say to people, especially if they're feeling pressure from their families or their communities to conform and to feel like they can't come out as atheists or admit even to themselves that they are. Just remember, number one is that you're not alone and you're not crazy. That's the first thing to understand. And there are people like you around you and you don't even know it. Mm-hmm. So reach out, go online, do what you have to do, but get on there and look for your local communities, check out your local meetup groups. I guarantee you'll find some group somewhere where you can find like-minded people, and you can start coming out around folks who aren't going to judge you, and you can start owning your new identity.
And finding allies.
Yeah, you can find, exactly. Just basically finding that opportunity to
Makes a whole world of difference.
Yes.
Be okay with yourself.
I want to thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.